Hi everyone, welcome to Photoshopping Theory, where we make image theory look better. In this episode, I'm going to explore phenomenological image theory with you, and I'm going to share some tools that help explain the concept a little better. Now, the first thing I want to do is ask you to take a look at this photograph and tell me what you see. Now, many of you might answer, it's some woman performing some sort of dance or ritual. And I would ask you, is it really what you're seeing? A phenomenological point of view would question what you had just answered, if that was your answer, because phenomenology takes a very different approach to understanding images. For phenomenologists, they would see this photograph and see, some orange here, this green here, it's brighter here, bunch of red here, black, red and black splotches here too, more orange of a different shade, and they would see these little details, this little curve right here, and this line that intersects. They see details, and they treat all the details as equal to any other detail in the photo. There's no image there's no part of the image that's more important than another part of the image. So what I want to show you today is actually called high frequency separation. High frequency separation is a technique that a lot of beauty touch-up artists use. So a lot of people who do touch-ups either for portraits or models and things like that use this because it's a very powerful technique. So I'm going to show you how to use that. So first thing I'm going to do is create a duplicate of my layers. I'm going to hit Control J, and I'm going to actually hit it twice. I'm going to rename this layer low frequency, and then I'm going to name this one high frequency. So the reason that we're going to create these two separate layers is that on a low frequency layer, we're creating all the color data. That's where we leave for the color data. And the high frequency layer, we're going to create all the details, the kind of things that make different parts of the image stand out from another. And we're separating the color information from the detail information so that we can affect one or the other without having to affect the other. So what we're going to do is go to the low frequency layer, select it. We're going to filter, blur, and then we're going to go Gaussian blur. And let's see, I'm going to zoom out real quick. And what you're looking to do with the Gaussian blur is to just blur it enough so that you still maintain the color in the general areas that you want, but you are getting rid of the detail. You don't want any detail information in this, because like I just said, you're going to want that in the high frequency layer. So I'm actually going to go with this. Hit OK. So if I turn this off, and if I turn this off, you can see that this layer is blurred. So now I'm going to go back here. I'm going to turn this on. Have high frequency layer selected. I'm going to go to Image. Going to Apply Image. Going to select the layer. We're going to select low frequency. So we're going to select the layer that we put the Gaussian blur on, and we're making our color layer. Leave this on RGB. We're going to go to Subtract. Here. We're going to set the opacity to 100%, scale to 2, and the offset 128. So you can pretty much leave these as is. Hit OK. And as you can see, we have this kind of bas relief, kind of negative looking thing, which kind of brings up an interesting point for us anyway. From a phenomenological point of view, this is just as relevant or useful or interesting as looking at this or looking at that. They're all different experiences. They're all different phenomena that we need to pay attention to and can pay attention to. And we can spend a lot of time paying attention to all the little nuances and differences between them. What I'm going to do is, for our purposes, for editing purposes, and for the purposes of people who would, do a kind of a beauty touch-up, we're going to go to our blending mode, and we're going to choose linear light. So as you see, this blend mode will kind of combine both that bas relief negative looking image that we had, and just going to combine it with our color layer, and it's going to look like the original photo that we had. Okay, so what we can do is, so let's see, I'm going to zoom in here. And so one of the things I see is the little bags under the eyes. They're a little bit discolored, they're a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is actually go to low frequency layer. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select the patch tool. Okay. I'm going to make sure sample all layers is off. You don't want it to be pulling from all layers. It's going to do some crazy stuff and it'll look funny and you won't know why. Just make sure this is off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select, let's just select this small area, and I'm just going to move it here. Do this. Okay. Okay. And we affected some of the color here. And also I see up here, a little splotch of red here. I'm going to fix that. Some splotches of red here, and we're going to change that. Oops. Let's see, what else? We'll go with that for now. And then with the high frequency layer, we can look at this little mark here and select it and move it over and change that. So as you can see, when we changed the high frequency layer, we didn't change the color underneath. And when we changed the low frequency layer, we didn't change any of the details that were sitting on top. So this is why it's a really useful tool for beauty touch-up, so that you can maintain the texture and the quality of the skin, but you can change. If someone has their cheeks are a little bit ruddy and splotchy, you can kind of change that. Or if they have some kind of uneven texture on their skin, but the color is okay, then you can change that as well, and you can do them independently from one another. So this is a good time to start talking about kind of how a phenomenological perspective understands this image right now. So just like with semiotics, phenomenology can kind of break down an image into three parts. Those three parts are the image carrier, the image object, and the image subject. Now the image carrier is the thing that the image is on. So for our purposes right now, it's the monitor, it's a screen. Or if you had a photograph in front of you, it would be the paper that the photograph is on. The image object is actually what makes phenomenology very unique perspective to understand images, because an image object is kind of the details, it's the phenomenon, it's the experiences that we have of this image. So it's an image object is each little, I'm going to zoom in really, really close, each little pixel, each little block of color that we see on a very kind of granular note. But it can also be, the splotch right here, or it could be this little thread or bit here, or this curve here. So, image object is what's really unique about it is that it has no uh, it has no reality to it. It doesn't have any basis in the real world. It is solely a figment of our imagination in a way. It's something that we observe. It's something that we see, we recognize it, we perceive it, but there's nothing kind of real about it other than our perceiving of it. Or another way to think about it is, you were to turn around and look away from this photograph right now, there would be no image object. There'd be nothing to look at. There'd be nothing to perceive. So there'd be nothing. It's only when you look at this photo that you can perceive the image object. And then lastly, there's the image subject. The image subject is related to the image object in that, objects, this is the kind of one way where what you see can be related back to something in the real world. So, that's how we can get around, say, this crown here. The shape that we see, the colors that we see, they kind of have our perception of it anyway does have some connection back to something real that happened, and that's what the image subject is. So what's important to note here also is that going back to this idea of the image object and how it's not real. Well, here's an example to explain to you how it's not real. Go ahead and look, take your image carrier, so your monitor, and look behind it. Do you see the back of this girl that you're perceiving? Do you see the back of this flower right here? Do you see the back of this crown? No, you see the back of your monitor. So to talk about this flower is a little bit weird because all of a sudden if you try to treat it like a flower, if you try to smell it, if you try to touch, feel the petals, if you try to look at it in a different way or a different light or move it around, you can't do that. There's nothing real about it. It's just this. It's a figment of our perception. That's all it is. And this is what phenomenology is trying to point out, that we can't do anything with we're calling this a belt, but there's nothing about it that acts like a belt. It's completely rigid. We'd never be able to wrap it around our waist. It's there. It's this thing. We do perceive it, but there's just nothing beltish about it. And same thing with this girl. We could never, walk around her. We could never see the back of her. We will only always ever be able to see this view that we're seeing right now. So, going back to the edits, I'm just going to do a couple of things just to show you the kind of power of high frequency separation. We see these little moles or marks right here, and we can go down to the low frequency layer, select it, and just kind of move it around. Okay. And then I'm going to select this, get rid of that. So a lot of times when people, you see in magazines or things like that, when people kind of complain that, a famous person's moles were removed, this is one of the ways you do it. There are plenty of other ways. This is just one, but this is a very powerful way because, once again, it kind of maintains the texture that was there. So now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an adjustment layer. I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to do something just because I've seen it a lot, and it seems to be something a lot of people like. It's a certain look, and I think a lot of people have gotten used to this look through, photo filters or photo apps, especially like Instagram or something like that, to start kind of giving it a sort of kind of a vintage look. So what you're going to do is, with this curves layer, you're going to grab this end, the dark end. This end is the shadow end, and you're just going to bring this straight up. You're going to, hold it to the left, and you're going to bring the blacks up. And what you're doing is you're just crushing the blacks. So what that means is you're not letting the blacks get as black as they can be. So all the dark all the parts of this image that are black, you're just reducing their blackness, or how black they can get. And then we're going to do the same thing with the whites. We're going to bring down the whites, same thing. So you can already see it has this kind of faded, kind of vintage look to it. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to do this just to create a little bit of contrast. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to create a levels layer, and this kind of does can kind of do something similar with the curves. What we're going to do is affect how dark the blacks, and like where the information starts reading blacks and where black gets treated kind of relatively, and same thing with the whites and the midtones. So as I move these around, you can see how the image gets affected. I'm actually going to make this a bit darker, burn it, make it look kind of a little bit more burned. And actually I'm going to do output right about here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the elliptical marquee tool, and kind of same thing going on this trend of kind of those filters that people use with their photos on their phones. I'm gonna kind of create a burn look around the edges. So I'm gonna create a giant kind of ellipse. Move this here, like so, and then I'm gonna hit Alt backspace, and you can see what that did was it created it left all that's inside of this circle. Didn't apply the levels changes that I did, but it's leaving it on the outside here. And you can see wherever it's white here, the effect will be visible, and then wherever it's black here, the effect will not be visible. So I'm going to select off of it. And the other thing we're going to do with this still selected, we're going to go to Filters, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Zoom out real quick, and we're gonna blur this just so that it blends in a little bit better. So it's an important thing to note, even this effect that I applied, we're not changing how the light hit this room at any given time. What we're doing is we're changing the luminosity, or the kind of or the saturation of these pixels, so that it kind of creates this look as if it looked like that. No one would ever say that when you apply your Instagram filter that you are, putting a cyanogram kind of all over your friend's face when you apply that filter. So do that, and see, I'm going to actually create another curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to do this. Change the look of the image even more. Actually, okay. And I'm going to do the same thing, so just a little bit smaller, so kind of something like this. Generally speaking, ovals are kind of nice to make a little bit elongated circles when you're doing these kind of effects. Just because it doesn't make it as obvious that the effect was happening that way. So I'm going to hit Alt backspace, and that's Option Delete for those of you on the Mac. Once again, the effect isn't being applied here, and it is being applied on the outside. I'm going to select off of it. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Probably bring this back a little bit. actually, I'm gonna bring these effects down a little bit. Okay. Go back to this curves layer. I'm just gonna okay. And another thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go back to this low frequency layer, and I'm going to show you something kind of basic. So there's several ways to do it, and since I already have the high frequency layer on, some people will dodge and burn by actually creating another layer and creating a gray layer and then dodging and burning that. What I'm going to do is, since we have this low frequency layer, I'm just actually going to paint right on that. I'm going to hit X so that this white comes over top, and that'll be our foreground color. I'm going to select the paintbrush, pick a brush. I'm going to bring this flow down all the way to 1%. I'm going to actually zoom in, and I'm going to just, very lightly just start painting. I'm going to lighten up these eyes. So one of the things that you can do to kind of help, and the reason I'm doing this is because you can create separation between the dark part here and the light part here, and increasing that difference will make it seem kind of more, make it seem like it's more clear. Because there's going to be such a sharp contrast between the dark and the white that it'll actually make it look like you're in focus more, because you're able to perceive that sharp distinction. So even if it's not completely in focus, it's going to kind of just create the illusion that it is. That, do a little bit over here. And so you just want to build it up little by little. I want to do that. And actually, the other thing I'm going to do with this, let me zoom out a little bit. So it's going to look a little funny, and actually, when you zoom out, it doesn't look as funny. But just to help it out a little bit, I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to go to blur and go to Gaussian blur. I'm just going to blur that a little bit more. That's way too much. Just going to blur just a little bit. So this is what's happening on that layer. So maybe I'll blur just a little bit more. Okay, hit OK. And so we brightened up those eyes a little bit, and create a little bit of contrast between the white and black. Like that. And there we go. I'm going to bring this back down a little bit. Effect down just a tad. Same thing with this one. I'm going to just bring this back, the overall effect down a little bit. Okay. I'm actually going to group all this together. I'm going to shift click all of these and then hit Control G or Command G on the Mac. I'm going to turn this on, I'm going to turn this off. So we went from this to that. So, kind of going back, Phenomenology would say that, yeah, we've edited and altered and changed a lot of these pixels here, and these image objects, these things that we perceive, but we didn't actually change, we didn't change her eyes, we didn't change the flower. We didn't change the light in this room. We didn't change, how these things look. All we did was change the pixel values, and that change, that isn't to downplay the change. It just, what we're changing is something that we have to pay closer attention to, because if we did actually change that flower, um, it's something that isn't possible in the physical real world. You can't go up to a flower and change its saturation and its luminosity and its texture and its color independently of each other. And you can't do all these things that we just did in this photograph. So I hope you learned something. I hope it was enjoyable. And if you want to see more, let me know.